it's absolutely amazing to have Todd here and for him to come on and say hello to everybody as he did last night. And it's a very proud thing for us as a club that started off, as I said to you yesterday, in 1983 I began working for the fan club, 40 years ago this year. And when Elvis passed away in 1977, this guy's face was all over the news, and I didn't have a clue who he was or what it was all about. But 1967, he took over the Elvis Presley fan club, and I am absolutely certain when I say that if it wasn't for Todd, none of us would be here today, because I certainly wouldn't be. So I think we all owe him a great debt. So once again, he's going to have a chat to Colin about a few things. Please give a big round of applause for the president of the Elvis Presley fan club since 1967, Mr. Todd Slaughter.
Good afternoon. Okay, it's like that, is it? Give me an E! You're there, that's good. That'll do for now. Okay, good afternoon and welcome to this afternoon's event. Can you put that light up again? Thank you very much. Right, we interviewed Todd successfully last year and it went down so well, we decided, and we had to think about things, and we had so many more questions that we'd like to ask Todd before he dies. And
which could be any time.
Well, so...
But by the way, I am not having a funeral. Boil in the bag, in the skip.
Boil in the bag. I like it. So anyway, so we'll get on with this afternoon's proceedings. Todd, you've always expressed the importance of radio throughout your tenure as head of the British Fan Club. Why is radio so important to you?
I think it's more important these days than it has been for a long time, for many reasons. I mean, if you were as old as me, then you were brought up by Radio Luxembourg, and then it was Pirate Radio, and then it was the Radio 1, for my sins, Radio Trent, Quality Europe FM, Radio London Big L, Radio Caroline Flashback. I will tell you a very funny story. On the very first trip that we went to the States, I was with Tony Prince, and when we were in Las Vegas, we went around all the radio stations, knocking on the door, and we came across this caravan. And this caravan was operating 2 radio stations, but with 1 presenter. One end of the station was rock and roll. The other end of the station was country music. So what this guy would do, you've got to remember, you were playing vinyl then and punching in cassettes. He would do the heavy rock man at one end, play the record, run like bugger to the other end, key up a commercial, a jingle, and then do the country. Now the radio station WRAR, Rock and Roll Radio, was very, very successful. The country music station was WANC, Radio Across the Nation Country. And he called it wank radio. Now, in the States, it doesn't mean the same as it does over here. But for us, it was incredible. And then here was this sort of, oh, you're tuned to wank radio. I couldn't make it up, but it was great. Radio is important. And of course, now for us, oldies, we've got sort of Angel Radio and Boom Radio and a plethora of independent pop radio stations for our age group. And it's good that it's here. It's also very good that we've got smart speakers too, because, you know, if you are starting out as being an Elvis fan, really what you should do, because let's face it, it's easy to go to a charity shop and buy 50 CDs at £1 a piece, because that's sadly what they cost, you know, when they're old, like me. I'm 50 pence a piece. And of course you can get virtually all that you need, but what smart speakers do, they give you a wide variety of Elvis's music, and that's good. And then you can build on your collection. The great problem with collections these days, particularly Follow That Dream, you've got books that weigh 3 kilos, they're the same CDs that were released 3 times previously. They give away a single to make it a buyable, and they sell it for £350. You pick the book up, you drop it on the floor, you break the spine, it ain't worth anything. And I think that the element of greed within that marketplace is awful, because fans deserve better, I think. And you will notice that I can't remember what the last Elvis album that came out by RCA. I've no idea. It was probably the movie one with Baz Luhrmann. You know, they've really got to start marketing Elvis properly again.
Would you say that the radio stations are still important as today, as far as playing Elvis is concerned, as it was in his heyday? Is it still prominent? It needs to be prominent.
Well, I think it's even more prominent now, purely because with so many radio stations and so many stations now beginning to cater for an older age group, you know, Boom play an Elvis record every hour, which is fantastic. Caroline Flashback play quite a lot. It's one of those things that is necessary if you're a radio fanatic, and let's face it, when you get to our age, apart from walking the dog, what else do? You listen to the radio or watch talking pictures.
Yeah, that's very true. Let's just move away from that for a second. Let's talk about Memphis and EPE. What is your relationship these days with EPE? Because I know it was strong during the 80s. I think he was in Memphis every couple of months or so and having meetings with Jack Soden. What is your opinion about EPE today? Well,
unfortunately, I've got a bit of a potty mouth when it comes to the people that work for...
No.
Yes. For Elvis Presley Enterprises. The only sort of cool guy left there is Jack Soden. Todd Morgan was wonderful, but who looks after the business now? It's lawyers and accountants. And I think one of the most drastic things that really happened to the fan club was that when we achieved 3.5 million views on our Facebook site a week, we got a congratulatory message from Facebook who said that we were obeying all the protocols and anything that was disrespectful we did take down, which we did. We don't want to be a libelous channel. And then within a week, we went off air. They took us down. And I got Jack Soden to admit that this was due to lawyers attempting to protect the name, likeness and image. And a lot of Elvis Facebook sites were taken down. The sad thing is, and it really is sad, you can't resurrect it again. You can't build up back to what was, 3.5 million. And this might sound sad, but what really helped us get to 3.5 million was really the death of Paul O'Grady. Because I featured my, brief meeting with Paul O'Grady, and of course that went viral, and of course all of a sudden people were looking at the Elvis Presley site, and we peaked at, I think, 3.7 million. It was astonishing. But of course that irked Elvis Presley Enterprises, and with their lawyers and their high-rolling organisation, they got us taken down. But we're not the only person to become victim of this. But it's rather sad that the organisation that ordinarily promotes everything that Elvis Presley Enterprises do is being kicked in the nuts. Now, you will know, did many go to the O2 or elsewhere to see the concert? Yes. Once again, it was fabulously attended, sold out throughout, but also it's 20-year-old technology. And I'm not saying they should AI it, but they have to go into the vaults and get better quality film material and add to the storyline, because the Elvis story, which has, I think, been denigrated by the Baz Luhrmann thing, which was really not truthful. I think, we've got to get the truth back into the Elvis world and not be ashamed of it either. Because Elvis was the greatest entertainer that we will ever have, and any entertainer that you can think of that's not modelled themselves on Elvis, but followed the same sort of path that Elvis did. Without Elvis, as John Lennon said, before Elvis there was nothing.
Absolutely.
And I think we will, you know, we have that situation now.
So why do EPE seem to think that Elvis did nothing after the Aloha from Hawaii show? Why? For instance, how would you feel about a re-edit and a recut on Elvis in concert?
I think Elvis in concert doesn't need to be buried at all. It needs to be re-edited because the movie itself, the TV show itself, was edited. There's only 22 minutes of Elvis in it. It was edited to show the dramatic side of Elvis's decline. Having seen outtakes, and you've all seen outtakes, Elvis looked a darn sight more happier than he did featured in Elvis in concert. It just needs a good re-edit. And I'm surprised that they haven't done it. I guess it's because EPE don't particularly own it. So they really don't want to do anything with it.
It's a shame. It really is a shame. Tell us, I did notice one thing. I was going through YouTube as you do, and I noticed there was a news event from 1972 featured from a TV crew in Las Vegas. And the Brits were filmed as part of that TV feature. Surely the company was tipped off to feature them, and was there any footage of the actual shows that they were?
Well, I mean, they did use a bit of Elvis on stage, and it was NBC, the local affiliate, that did that, and Colonel Parker arranged it. Now, I asked Colonel Parker after Elvis passed if he still had contacts at NBC, because they just wouldn't have shot 30 seconds of Elvis, they would have got quite a bit. And it's wonderful film footage, and it's a shame that it's buried. He did pick the phone up, but the people he dealt with at NBC, they weren't at NBC weren't there anymore, unfortunately. But it's got to be in a vault somewhere, and it's precious because there's apart from that's the way it is. There's very little film footage of Elvis on stage at the Las Vegas Hilton or the International.
Well, speaking of which, last year when we interviewed you, I asked you about the on-tour footage and that's the latest footage, and you said it would never be released for whatever reason. Recently we've been told by Baz Luhrmann or his tease that this footage is going to be released. So what could you tell us about that? Have you heard anything?
Well, I've heard absolutely sod all, to be honest with you, and I have this expression from the Midlands that I've heard ducks fart before. If it's commercially viable, it will happen. But if it's not going to be shown in cinemas and it's not going to be a big made-for-TV product where, you know, NBC or a CBS or whoever, you know, pay 10, 20 million for it, I can't see it happening. Now, you've heard that it might be streamed.
Yeah. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. There's lots of rumours going around at the moment, and I think I've heard a couple of rumours about basing it on the Beatles with the Get Back series, so it could be something like that, but whether it's true or not, who knows?
I mean, the Beatles are very, very clever, or their company's very clever in what they do.
Well, okay, thanks for that. We talked about the movie as well last year. It only just come out basically a couple of months before. Have your feelings changed about it? Have you watched it again, and has anything else come to light?
Well, I've watched it many times. I mean, I foolishly spent 20 quid with Amazon to get it forever. Yeah. I'm so disappointed with it. Don't get me wrong, Austin Butler did a great job. He worked with the script that he was given. I think the behaviour, as far as the script was concerned, about Gladys Presley was appalling. I think Elvis would have, you know, throttled Baz for doing that. And there were lots of inaccuracies, timeline inaccuracies throughout that made it just it wasn't viable, it wasn't believable. But for the general public that went to see it, that is the story that they will believe forever was Elvis Presley's life. And although we all have to accept that, you know, Elvis had his troubles and traumas, Christ, we all have them. But they concentrated on them, whereas for the best part of Elvis's life, and for the most part of Elvis's, even his last few years of life, he enjoyed himself. Okay, there were times when maybe his mental illness was challenged. Who knows? We weren't there. But on the whole, he had a good life. The worst problem was that he died when he was 42. And no one can explain why or how that really happened. There's all sorts of stories about it. I don't know. And I don't really want to question it. It's part of history, and that's what it is.
Okay, let's move on. Documentaries. Let's talk about some great Elvis documentaries from the past. There's been some great documentaries, but I've found, and maybe I'm being biased, I don't really know, but don't you think us Brits produce better documentaries on Elvis than anybody else?
Certainly, I think Touch Me and I Bleed, that was produced by Anne Freer, was without doubt the best documentary of its kind of the time.
This was the Presley documentary. It was called Presley, and it was a two-part documentary.
Yeah, it was a two-part. Cut Me and I Bleed, and I Don't Sound Like Nobody. That was fantastic. But the good thing was, Anne Freer did that at a time when all the talking heads that knew Elvis were around, accessible, and alive. If you tried to do it now, who's left? And that's the problem. You know, we've got Elvis's musicians, none of which now are in the best of health. The good guys aren't around anymore, you know, Scotty and DJ. And even the Memphis Mafia, they're not around anymore. And that's sad, because they contributed tremendously to the continuity and the storyline of that thing that Anne Freer really spent a lot of time making what is the most fantastic documentary, which I believe was never shown in the States.
Let's talk about what for me was the ultimate documentary. You was involved in this quite a lot. And of course, I think all these fans here would agree with me. Remember Elvis, he touched their lives. That was such a great documentary, wasn't it? And can you tell us how that documentary came about, and how much you was involved, and how long the production took, etc., etc.?
It was, I mean, let's face it, they came knocking on my door, knowing the fact that the fan club was taking trips to the States. And the first person who actually went, not with the group, but a few days before to do the documentary, was Alan Wicker. Now, Alan Wicker was a wartime reporter, very, very clever guy. Not someone that you would have expected to be involved with Elvis Presley at all, but he had this panache, if you like, for reporting newsworthy material. And the fact that, you know, 200 devotees of Elvis Presley were going to the States, it was a big news story. It would have made for him a really good documentary. And Wicker's World was one of those amazing travelogues that featured all sorts of quirky stuff. And I guess we were top of the quirky list. What happened was, we were on the plane going over there, ITV called a strike. They couldn't film, they couldn't do anything other than do a little bit of research. Wicker packed his bags, we never saw him. He went back with his mistress, Valerie Cleaner, I think her name was, and he came you know, back to England. And I thought he was dead in the water. And he was dead in the water until a production assistant called Julia Suddards rang me up and she said, look, we're going to do it. We're going to do it again. This time we're going to do it properly, and we've got a big name, but I can't tell you who it is, but you can come and meet him. And it was David Frost. Now, at the time, David Frost was possibly the biggest name from British television that had ever crossed the Atlantic and become bigger over there. So when we arrived with David Frost, it was rather like arriving with a superstar. People who actually went on that trip will remember people in Tupelo lined the streets to see David Frost. It was remarkable. I mean, it was good television. It won an award. It was shown at Christmas. We couldn't have asked for anything better.
That's great. I remember the old videos that were made in the old days, but not officially, by Bernard
Broughton.
Yeah, they were fantastic.
They were, yeah.
They were really good.
I think some of them are still available on YouTube, but unfortunately, Bernard lived in a thatched cottage, and it burned down, as thatched cottages do.
Is he still with us?
He's still around, yes. He lives in Poundbury, you know, King Charles has got this rather quirky estate, not far from where I live, and Bernard Wroughton always used to show the Prince around, and there were two people, a woman, I think an Indian woman, and him, who were his contacts.
Okay.
So he's got very many happy snaps with Prince Charles, but I don't think the King's been back there yet.
Okay. Let's go back to the fan club. What is the current state of the fan club, and tell us about any future plans?
Well, I think when we lost the Facebook link, when we suffered the massive financial loss created to the fan club following the sort of 2.5 years of COVID, people got to the point where, although we had sort of continued to send out magazines, when it came to rejoining, they thought they were going to get magazines for nothing. So physically, people didn't rejoin. What we've done now, we've offered free membership to everybody, but we've permanently gone online. Of course we would like to do magazines, but you ain't going to send as many Christmas cards this year as you did in the past, because postage, I mean, it's the price of a meal, isn't it? You're not going to send 200 Christmas cards. I still actually use my Somali stamps. I send all my Christmas cards out with Somali stamps on them, and I've got Arabic airmail stickers that go with it, and I just sling them into letterbox. I do about 400 a year. I'm robbing the post office an absolute fortune, but I don't care. The fan club's employed enough postmen over the years to excuse that, and of course nobody knows where they come from because they don't put my name and address on them.
Okay. So what about any future plans? Can you tell us anything?
Well, one of the things that I mentioned earlier was, if you will, the 60th anniversary of That's All Right. And what we want to do is do a one-day event, which would be the 70th anniversary of Elvis recording, or thereabouts. That's all right. The problem is, planning something so far in advance is good for us to try to do it, but crap to try to get anyone to commit to performing. I mean, we don't want to go down the path of having what everyone else has had over the years. We want to have something special. And we've got people on the subs bench. Sadly, we were going to have Charlene Spiteri, but her management won't let her do it because she's got a tour of New Zealand at the time. And the same thing has happened with Kim Wilde, because we thought Kim Wilde would be a good one. We're trying to appeal to a different marketplace. We're trying to put a professional show on. We've had talks with Sky Arts, but I mean, that's going to go down the toilet. The idea was to get all the, if you like, the intelligentsia, the people that met, worked or did things with Elvis, from Michael Grade, Lord Grade, Jeffrey Archer, all these people that had contact with Elvis, Petula Clark, British people that are known throughout the world, and of course Tim Rice and Andrew, all to do either personal appearances or vox pops on the screen talking about the time they spent with Elvis, as well as some really good entertainment. But if you can't get a headline act, what do you do? And as I say, you can't really go down the path of Herman's Hermits when Peter Noon's not there. And Peter Noon would be a good one, but he's a miserable sod because he doesn't ever reply to my emails. Because you met Elvis, didn't he? He was the first, if you like, Brit to meet Elvis as an entertainer. He probably doesn't have a lot to say about it, but he did do it.
Billy Fury was the first, I think.
Of course, but he's not around to do the vox.
No, he's not around now, of course not. No. I wish he was, but okay, we'll move on. Let's go back to almost the beginning. Let's go back to 1956 when the Elvis explosion had really truly exploded, and there was all those great TV shows that Elvis appeared on, like the Dorsey Brothers and the Milton Bill Show, etc. Why have we not seen them in the pristine condition that they were filmed in the first place? Do you think somewhere down the line we could get some decent DVD releases like we did with the Ed Sullivan shows?
I think those early shows weren't filmed. I think they were kinescopes. In other words, they filmed what was on the tube. So as a consequence, the quality is piss poor. I mean, they can, these days, treat it and resurrect it and make it work. But whether it's financially viable or not, I don't know. Because how do you sell it these days? DVDs, people don't buy in the thousands that they used to do. Obviously, the last biggest selling Elvis-related DVD was the Baz film. I don't think anything else would come near to those kind of sales.
Okay, thanks. I think before we wind this interview up, Todd, you mentioned earlier on about EPE and everything, and you've been in contact with them because your Facebook page had been taken down. As a lot of people know, I wrote an open letter to EPE and I didn't get a reply, and I didn't expect one. You wrote a letter to EPE and you did get a reply. I'm really pleased about that, but I don't know actually what your reply was, so can you share that with us?
Well, the reply was very basically that ABC, or whatever it's called, the people that own Graceland, have left Graceland to themselves. In other words, they don't, Wine Shack has some sort of involvement, but Graceland is one of those organisations that rolls on, you know, you open the door, people pay the money, they go in. Sadly, they're paying far too much money to go in these days, but that's the way of life, I'm afraid. But he did say that he was talking with the lawyers to see if they can redress the problem. He said he didn't hold out any hope, and since then, sadly, I've not heard from him. I mean, Jack's one of the good guys, and the fact that he had the decency to sort of 60% admit that it was them that did it was good enough for me.
Okay, thanks. Well, is there anything you want to add before we...
Well, yes, one or two people have spoke about my book. You can get the book if you still want it. Proceeds go to Papworth Hospital, and I'm happy to sign it. You know, if you want the signature on it, it might be worth less with my signature on than it would be if it was unsigned.
Ladies and gentlemen, please can you put your hands together for the legend that is Mr. Todd Slaughter.
Thank you all very much. Thank you for coming out of the rain and into here. Very kind.
Well, we're going to clear the stage now. We've got a great band rocking and waiting in the wings to come on and entertain you, and we'll catch you a little bit later on. Thank you very much.